Welcome back to week 2 of Striper season updates with On the Water. I'm Matt Haeffner, and over the next 12 weeks, we'll be bouncing around the Striper coast following different bites as the fish migrate north. We'll talk to all sorts of credible fishing sources from Jersey to Maine to give you the scoop on how the bite changes over the coming months. Last week, we talked to Captain Brian Williams of Bad Fish Charters in Ocean City. Brian's been chasing fish around warm water pockets of southern Jersey's back bays and finding plenty of bass stacked up in the 25 to 30 inch range. But we're going to scoot up the coast just a bit to northern New Jersey to get some information on the bite between Barnegat and Raritan Bays. The tactics will change a little bit as we move from southern New Jersey to northern New Jersey, but the goal remains the same. As far as the bite for the migratory stripers around northern New Jersey, we've seen a big push of schoolies with a slight increase in water temperature over the past week. Holdovers seem to be dominating the bite, and with adult bunker around, the bigger residential bass are hungry. They're feeding heavily on menhaden and anything that resembles them. This week, I'm speaking with New Jersey writer and angler John Oswald. John is the author of the weekly North Jersey Fishing Report here at On the Water. He has the scoop on what to expect from North Jersey's waters this week and every week throughout the striper season. So John, first I wanted to kind of give everybody an idea of, how you typically start your striper season and where you're typically fishing in northern New Jersey. When we say northern New Jersey, we're talking about Barnegat Bay to Raritan Bay. So where do you typically start your season and what are you looking for at the backwater?
Well, I usually start right at the end of my street. I live in Ocean Grove, and the ocean is right at the end of the street. So I'll start probably in April, fishing worms off the beach. But then if I'm lucky enough to find myself on a boat, I'll head up to Raritan Bay and fish the bay up there using soft plastics, the metal lip swimmers, spooks. If I get up to Raritan Bay and if I get over to the Navesink River, I'll use swimming plugs and because there's usually a lot of nice fish in there at the beginning of the spring. The fish are right now are in the teens up to like 40 inches. These are all pre-spawn bass because they're mostly residential fish that are coming up out of the rivers, that have been up there all winter. I mean, I was getting reports in late February of people catching bass in the Hackensack River, and releasing them, obviously. But so those seem to be mostly resident fish up there. They're catching bass too down in Barnegat Bay, but it's not as hot as it is up in Raritan Bay. And in the tidal rivers, the Manasquan, Shark River's got a few fish, but not a whole hell of a lot. And the Navesink and the Shrewsbury Rivers are getting them too. There hasn't been a whole lot of bait up there. I mean, it's all bunker. They're feeding on bunker and herring, but there hasn't been a whole big schools as of yet. So I'm not sure what's holding them up, but usually you can walk on the pods of bunker up in Raritan Bay this time of year.
But talk a little bit about those flutter spoons. I know that's been a huge deal down in specifically the Raritan Bay area. We haven't really gotten into it much of it up here. And, I know a lot of guys down on Long Island that have just started to use flutter spoons because they've seen, the damage and potential they can do in Raritan Bay. So, why do you think that the fish love these spoons so much in that New York bite area?
The guys over at Tack Waterman, Mike Gleason in particular, was watching a lot of films of this freshwater Ben Nichols, this freshwater fisherman. He got a hold of the guy who makes the spoons that were used for freshwater. They were like 7 inches. This is a 9-inch flutter spoon. They just drop them, and when they hit the water, they just go like this, back and forth, and mimic the bunker, either an injured bunker or one that's swimming amongst the school. And the bass have been all over them for the last couple of years. They've been selling out there. Every bait and tackle shop on the Jersey Shore now carries them, where 2 years ago you couldn't even find them. So this guy Nichols, Ben Parker Spoons, Ben Parker was the fisherman who started them. And this guy at Nichols Tackle was making them. So Mike Gleason got a hold of him and said, we need heavier tackle. We need a couple of different colors. We need to mimic bunker. So they put a shattered pattern on some of them, where they really reflect the light. And they've taken off like wildfire here. I mean, that's what everybody's been using up there. Just drop them over the side, let them fall to the bottom, bring them back up, let them fall again. And that's what they've been catching them on.
I was going to ask you because they seem like they're pretty heavy duty. But they do have this flutter action. So does it most effective to jig them, or is it more effective to troll them?
It's more effective just to drop them, and let them slide, drop them to the bottom, bring them back up and jig them. Yeah, you do jig them, get them back up into the water column and then let them fall down again. And Mike has said to me that a lot of the bites happen when they're descending. So that's how they've gotten so popular. And he does, they become a plain white, yellow, like I said, these hammered, shattered pattern where they, it looks like scales on them that reflect the light. And guys, like I said, have been doing a lot of damage with them.
Yeah, they seem to be the most popular. I had a couple buddies that actually scooted over there from Jamaica Bay to Raritan Bay last week, and they were getting on them with big flutter spoons as well.
Yeah, they've been, like I said, very popular. A little expensive, but they're popular.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all the good baits are, right?
Yeah, right.
So you mentioned earlier that a lot of these fish are residential, but how many of these fish in the Raritan Bay, Barnegat Bay area do you feel like are residential versus, I guess, quote unquote, migratory from maybe the Hudson stock?
As a percentage wise, I would say, probably 30-40% of the ones in the Raritan Bay are all resident fish. It's probably greater down in Barnegat Bay as well, because those fish don't seem to go anywhere. The fish head up into the Hudson, when the water gets a little warmer. I mean, this is all pre-spawn stuff up there right now. So the water's got to get to about 60 degrees or a little higher, and they'll head up into the Hudson there. But I think a lot of the fish that, winter over in these rivers, that a lot of them never leave uh, and are probably spawning maybe back in the Hackensack and the Raritan River and some of those other places.
I was going to ask you about Barnegat Bay because I've heard a lot of the fish kind of tend to stack up and almost just hold their year round from what it seems like a lot of guys have experienced, and that's actually it's funny, that's the case in Jamaica Bay a lot recently too. You have a lot of fish in, I would say, the 25 to 30 inch range at most, if not maybe even a little smaller, a couple bigger, but not much outside of that range of class of fish that's just sitting in Jamaica Bay year round. They don't go anywhere. They use, the Hudson to spawn, and then they're whoop right back out the gateway into Jamaica Bay. And it's really interesting that these fish have decided to just start to winter over here. In a lot of places, like you said, the Raritan River, Raritan Bay is one of them. End of April, are you starting to move out towards the surf? Are you still fishing the back bays?
I fish the beach. That's my place all the time, and that's when I usually start there. If I'm not up in the bay on a boat, because I usually don't go boat fishing that much, I'm usually on the beach. And throwing soft plastics in the surf, um, April, May, June, you'll find some fish. They're not going to be that big. And then June is when the sand crab bite really picks up.
As the water temperature continues to increase, as well as the air temperature, and you see some of those bigger migratory fish start to push north, what do you change about the lures and plugs that you're throwing?
I'll go if I'm fishing off the beach, if they're moving up the beach. I'd love to throw a popper, and I've caught them in May and June on poppers off the beaches here. Right up close to Asbury Park. Um, but those are my favorites. Another favorite of mine is these jointed red fins that seem to work really well in the local, in the ocean and off the beach at that time of year. The other thing that I really get into is fishing with sand crabs in June around here. The bite, I don't know whether it's due to all the beach replenishment that's been going on here, but everything got buried. All the natural baits like worms and crabs and so forth. But there's been an explosion of these little sand crabs, and fishing them on a hook with just a piece of split shot. The bass are burrowing around, rooting around right close to the beach, looking for something to eat, and they've been feeding on them like crazy the last couple of years. And all those fish are probably 24 to 28 inches. There's a lot of keepers involved, but you fish with light tackle and it's a blast.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually read your piece in the and on the Water magazine about that, and about how the gear you use is significantly downsized compared to what you would normally use in the surf, because they're cruising right there in that surf line where the waves are actually crashing at your feet. So to use something like a big plug or a 9 foot surf rod, 11 foot surf rod, it's total overkill, and you're actually bypassing all these fish that are feeding on just a much smaller presentation right in front of you.
7.5 foot rod, like 20-pound braid, um, a 30-pound, fluorocarbon leader, like a 4 or 5 circle hook, and then a piece of split shot if you need it. A little split shot like an eighth of an ounce. A couple of feet, 18, 25 inches above the hook, uh, and then like three or four sand crabs, some about the size of your thumb, and you just hook them inside the shell and throw them, about 8 to 10 feet off the beach, and the fish are right there. I mean, they just cruise back and forth practically in the wash, scoop up these little baits and then take off like a getaway car. And it's a blast. A 7-foot rod, and a light reel. They take a lot of line. It's a lot of fun, and you almost sight fish for them because you can see them sometimes rooting around in the sand, looking for the bugs.
That's amazing. I've always been like, because you see them, like a lot of the time I'll be fishing from a jetty when I was living back on Long Island, and I could see the fish just cruising the beach, and no matter what I threw at them, they wouldn't touch it. The bluefish were more than happy to chase a tin or a plug, a small soft plastic, but you only hook so many of those before you're tired of it, and you're just trying to weed through the blues and get to the bass, and it's amazing to know that they're feeding on these tiny little mole crabs basically. So obviously that's, when it gets a little bit hotter out. Not, I wouldn't say, by the end of April or anything, but now that the waters are getting warmer around northern New Jersey and you're seeing a lot more bunker and bait pushing into the back bays, what tips, if any, do you have for people going into the rest of the month of April? We have a full moon coming around April 16th, so about a week or so out. And that's going to hopefully push some more fish and some more bait up this way. So what tips would you have, if any, to give to northern Jersey fishermen at this point?
Well, from the people that I talked to this morning for my weekly reports, they're saying that the rivers, Raritan Bay is on fire. That was their word to me, and hitting on bait, swimming plugs, soft plastics up in the bay. They're also moving down into the rivers. There was better fishing in the Navesink and Shrewsbury rivers, which kind of feed into Sandy Hook and then Raritan Bay. So the fishing's picked up there. Also down in the Manasquan River, there's a lot more bass there at night, and the bridges in Barnegat Bay too are giving up a lot more fish in the evening on soft plastics, X-wraps, and small swimming plugs. So that's all working down there. I would fish, the tidal rivers. Barnegat Bay is probably going to get a lot better, and then the beaches, I think, within the next 2 weeks are going to start giving up more fish, both on swimming plugs and soft plastics.
I mean, I love using bucktails, especially on the North Shore of Long Island where it gets real rocky. So do you guys ever have a big bucktail bite down there?
Yes, I don't fish bucktails that often, but I know a lot of guys who swear by them and don't fish anything else. In fact, they were working really well up in Raritan Bay 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to somebody up at the tackle box there. Bucktails are always working. We're working up there, and they always work on the beaches along here. People really know how to use them, swear by them.
Yeah, especially with the addition of like something like those jig strips or a pork rind trailer. I mean,
exactly. Even these on the backs of the bucktails help, or even the old pork rind.
Yeah, Uncle Josh's.
Yeah, if you can find it.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's probably still a few bottles, maybe expired, laying around somewhere, but they never smelled very good anyway. So
there's also some fish and some stripers in the Point Pleasant Canal for anybody who likes the canal. I don't know if you've ever fished over there in the Point Pleasant Canal, but it's a rocky bottom and it's got more tackle stuck at the bottom of it than anywhere else in the world, I think.
Yeah, you could probably open a whole shop kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brutal. Well, I mean, it sounds like the bite's going great down there, and I hope you're feeling well and you can get after it soon. That's all the time we have for you this week, everybody. Thanks again to John Oswald for joining us this week. Seems like if you can locate a large pot of bunker and you throw a flutter spoon, odds are if there's bass in the area, it's going to get struck. For a lot of people who have never heard of or even used flutter spoons in the salt water, try out that bite at your local spots or head on down to Raritan Bay and get on some early season striper fishing yourself. If you haven't already, remember to sign up for Striper Cup using the link in the description down below. Check in next week for more striper season updates from up and down the striper coast between New Jersey and Maine. Thanks again for watching Striper Season Updates with On the Water.